Hi everyone. My name is Vishal and welcome to another session of Beginner Python. So in the previous couple of sessions, we looked into loops or iteration statements. We looked into both kinds of loops, for loops and while loops, and we saw what are the different things we can achieve using for loops and while loops and when to use which, right? And in this session, the focus is going to be on functions, right? So let's get started and discuss what is a function. The function is a block of code that can be called without having to write the code itself repeatedly. So what does this mean? So a lot of times we would want some kind of code to keep on repeating, right? So for example, let us say I want to write a function that is that's gonna greet me every single time, right? So let us say that that piece of code is print hello, welcome to Python, something like this, right? So let's say this piece of code is supposed to repeat every time someone logs in into an application or into a website or whatever. So instead of having to write this print statement again and again every time, what if I can just call a very small piece? So what do I mean by that? So let me define a function first. So I'm going to say def and I'm going to call this greet, right? I'll call this function greet. I'll add a parenthesis and I'll simply say return hello, welcome to Python. Now what this is gonna do is every time I just have to do greet and it's going to give me, it's going to execute whatever is inside the function greet, right? So now you get the idea, right? Super useful. And the most important keyword that you got to remember here is the return keyword. So the return keyword states what the function should output, right? It'll tell you what the function should output. So this is one of the most basic functions you can write, right? So you can do a bunch of other things. So define get nums, get first 10, get first 10. So I can write a function to get the first 10 numbers. So we can do that using the for loop. For I in range 10, print I. Now all I have to do is call this function and it's going to print all numbers from 1 to 10, right? Now here I have put print and what happens if I put return I? Let's see what happens if I put return I. Now you can see only the first element in the loop is printed and then it stops. Why is that? And that brings us to a very important property of the return. So the return keyword not only helps to specify what to return, what a function should return, but it also specifies when the function should stop, when the function should stop. So once the return statement or the return keyword is triggered, it indicates the stoppage of the function. So what happens in this case is for I in range 10, so it's going to start with 0. This is the same as 0, 1, 0, 10, 1. So I starts from 0, goes into the loop, and into the loop there's the return statement. It's going to return 0, and the return statement indicates the end of the function, so it's going to come out of the function. So always remember the return statement indicates the end of the function, right? So what if I don't want to use print? How will I write this? So there are a bunch of ways I can actually do that. What I can do is I can say, I can store these numbers in a list. So I can say for I in range 0, 10, L dot append I, and I can return the list. This will give me the list of the first 10 numbers, right? There it is. So that's the whole idea of a function. It sort of helps you to execute some piece of code just by calling the name of the function, right? Well, now the other important thing that I would sometimes want to do is I would probably want to pass something as a parameter inside the function. So let's say instead of first 10, I want the first n numbers. I want the first n numbers. So how do I get the first n numbers? I'll need to pass some parameter, right? Like if I want 10 numbers, how do I pass it? If I want 100 numbers, how do I pass it? If I want 1,000 numbers, how do I pass it? And the most amazing thing about a function is it accepts parameters inside the parenthesis. So this is where you can say, take this particular thing as an input. So take n as an input, right? And once you have n as an input, all you have to do is change this 10 into n. So now what this allows the user to do is the user can now simply enter how many times they want the loop to repeat, and it will repeat that many number of times. So how do you do that? Instead of just leaving it empty, you can say 10. That'll give you the list of first 10 numbers. I can say 100. That'll give me the list of first 100 numbers, right? I can say 5. That'll give me the list of the first 5 numbers. So you get the whole point. So this is called a parameter. So let me specify that. It's called a parameter, right? So I can pass a parameter, and I can pass how many ever parameters I want. I can pass how many ever parameters that I want to pass. So here I've passed only one parameter, which is n. I can pass two parameters as well. So I can say get first n with steps. So here it not only allows me to get the first n numbers, but it also allows me to add a step size. I'll say s. So now my step size is indicated by this number. So I'm going to say instead of 1, I'll put s. Now I can specify n as well as s. So give me the first 20 numbers with a step size of 2. And there you are. Right? So similarly, you can give as many parameters that you want to give. There's no restriction on the number of parameters. So that's the whole idea of a function. Now, what happens if I leave the parenthesis empty like this? without giving the parameters or the inputs? Well, it's going to give me an error. It says two required positional arguments. Arguments is nothing but parameters. N and S are missing. Right? It says it's missing. So I always have to specify my parameters. But is there a workaround? Is there a workaround to this? Can I set a default value to the parameters? And the answer is yes. So the workaround is, I'm just going to say, if you don't have any argument or any parameter, just by default assume n to be 10 and s to be 1. So now what I can do is I can run this without having to specify anything. By default, it's going to do 10 and 1. But that doesn't mean I have to always stick to 10 and 1. If I really want something else, I can give that. And it's going to follow what I give it. So it's very flexible, right? It has the capability to accept default values as well as be dynamic in nature. So that's the whole idea of functions, right? So I don't need to call this piece of code again and again, or I don't need to write it again and again. I can just call this function and I can store the result in anything else. I can store it in another list, right? So then I can, if I see the list, I have the list. I can do all sorts of functions. So I can say L1 is this list, and I can say L2 is, let's say, I'm going to say give me the first 50 numbers spaced out by 10. So then I can say L1 plus L2, which is a combination of two functions, and I get this. So as you can see, bunch of useful things that I can do using functions, right? Well, so let's write a few more. Let's go through some more examples. Let's say I want to write a function that can accept two numbers and add them, right? So very simple. So I'll say I'm gonna define a function saying add, and how many parameters do I need to accept? It says two numbers. So I'll accept two numbers, a comma b, and I'm gonna say return a plus b. Very simple, right? So all I have to do is next time, if I want to add two numbers, I can just say add 5 comma 7 or add 10 comma 34, right? Pretty straightforward. And let's do another example. Let's say I want to write a function that can accept two numbers as well as the operation to perform on them, right? So now it not only accepts the numbers, but also accepts the operation. So I'm going to call the function perform operation. So I'll take operation and two numbers. And I'm going to say if operation is add, return a plus b. Else, if operation is multiply, return a multiplied by b. Else, if operation is, let's say, divide, return A by B. I'll also add, I'll not add subtract, I'll say power. If operation is power, return A power B. And if it's none of this, it should return, please specify a correct operation. Right? So let's see if this works. So I'm going to say perform operation. I'm going to say give me the power, and I'll say 4, 3. So this should give me 4 to the power of 3. And it does. It does give me 4 to the power of 3. Right? Similarly, if I do multiply and I put 4, 7, it should give me 28. And it does give me 28. If I put something randoms, it's going to say, I haven't added the return here, so it's going to say, please specify a correct operation. Right? So these are just different functions you can write. Again, very useful. Ton of different things. You can add loops, you can add if statements, you can do a bunch of things. Now, what if you have a question or you want to do something like write a function that can accept any number of numbers and return the sum? Well, observe that it says I need to write a function that can accept any number of numbers. So not just one number or two numbers. Here it was specifying 2 numbers, right? And if it specifies 3 numbers, I can add another C here. If it specifies 4, I can add another D here. Here there is no specification as such. It says I need to allow the user to add any number of numbers, right? So is there any kind of a functionality that allows me to do this? And the answer is yes. So I can say, give me the sum or add these numbers, and I can perform this by putting an asterisk and saying args. So args represents arguments, and this asterisk is what communicates through code to the computer or to the programming language that allow the user to add as many numbers as they want. Right? Now, how do I return the sum? So I gotta treat this how I would treat an iterable object, like a list or an array or whatever it is. So, or a tuple. How do I treat this as an iterable object? I will simply loop through all the numbers in args. So I'll say for I in args, right? I'll say sum is equal to 0, or I'll say s is equal to 0, and I'll say s is equal to s plus I. And I will return s. So now what I can do is I can put as many numbers as I want without any restriction. And it's going to give me the sum of all those numbers, right? Or I can even add only 1, right? I can even add nothing. So that's the flexibility that this particular args allows me to do. But what exactly is args? Well, we can find out by just returning args. what data type is args? So let's find out. So if I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now it will return only the args. Args is nothing but a tuple, as you can see here. So this can, basically it can accept a tuple of any length. That's what this is saying. Well, so what if I want to go a step forward and I want to say, I want to perform a given or specified operation on any number of numbers, right? So I can definitely do that, right? So now I'll just have to loop through args again. So I can say for I in args, right? I can just put this in a loop, and I'll take sum and product. So I'll say if it's add, I'll need to add all the i's. If it's multiply, I will need to multiply all the i's. If it's divide, I will need to divide all the i's. And if it's power, let me not have a power, because it's going to create a different set of problems. It's going to create large numbers. And then I can simply say return s comma p. So now I can specify a particular operation. So I can say add, and I can give as many numbers that I want, right? It's add the numbers. So sum is 15, product stays 1 because I wanted the sum. Similarly, if I do multiply, it's going to multiply the numbers and it's going to give me the product, right? So that's the use of args, right? Super useful, even for different kinds of things. Now there's one more useful thing, and that's called as quarks. So this was called as args. And there's one more thing called quarks. So what exactly is quarks? So there's one small problem with args, and the problem is I cannot name my keywords, right? I can just say args. The user can give as many inputs as they want, but they are not allowed to name the inputs, right? So let's try it out. Let's try to name the input. So if I say A is equal to 1 and B is equal to 2, something like that, it's going to give me an error because simple args does not allow me to give variable names to the inputs. And that's the exact problem that quarks solves, right? So let's see what quarks actually does. So a quarks, it sort of creates a key value pair between the variable and the value. Creates a key value pair. So it's just the args version of allowing the user to give a variable name. As simple as that. So I can say, let me first just showcase a demo. So if I say quarks, so here I have to specify 2 asterisks. So that's the main difference. In args it was 1, here it's 2. And very simple, I'll say return quarks. So now if I say A is equal to 1, comma B is equal to 2, comma C is equal to 3. Look at that. So quarks is actually a dictionary. Now the person can not only give the variable name, but they can also give a particular value to the variable name, right? So why is this useful? So let's say I want to create a greeting based on user input. So what the user is going to do is the user is going to say define greet, and I'm going to accept quarks, and I'm going to say print hello, comma, quarks of name, and I'll say I see you are from quarks of city, and I'll say you are quarks of age years old, right? So something like this. So that's what I'm going to do. Yes, so I gotta put a comma here. So now what I can do is I can simply say name is equal to Jack, city is equal to Bangalore, and age is equal to 23. Look at that. It says, hello, Jack. I see you're from Bangalore. You're 23 years old. I can also add some if statements. If age is less than 20, I'll say print you are a teenager. Else print you are an adult. So I can remove this. Quarks of age, that is. See that? So this is a sort of useful things that Quarks allows me to do. I can give a name of the variable and I can also give a value, right? And because it's nothing but a key value pair. So super useful. And similarly, I can have args as well as quarks. I can have both in a particular function. So whenever that kind of a thing is found to be useful. So I can say define, I'll say demo, and I'll say print args, print quarks. So I can have both of these. So I can say first I need to put the args, and then I can put the quarks. Something like this. So it returns both of these. So I can work with both of these kinds of things, right? Whatever use case I have. So, that's about functions. Those are the different things that you can do using functions. Super useful. So I think there are, of course, a bunch of other things that you can do. But for the introduction part, this covers most of it. And I would encourage you guys to explore a bit more and try different sets of problems using functions. In the next session, we're going to see how we can build a class, right? See you in the next video, guys. Thank you.